What if the world had ended not with explosions, but with a single wrong decision? During the Cold War, humanity lived just minutes from extinction. For nearly half a century, every sunrise could have been our last. This is the story of how the world came closer than anyone realized to nuclear annihilation, not once, but multiple times. And how luck, fear, and human judgment saved billions of lives. In 1945, when the atomic bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the world entered a new age, the nuclear age. The United States stood alone with the power to destroy entire cities. But victory bred fear, and fear demanded competition. Within 4 years, the Soviet Union tested its own atomic bomb, ending America's monopoly and beginning a new kind of war, one fought in silence, in shadows, and in laboratories. By the 1950s, the Cold War had turned the globe into a chessboard divided by ideology. The US and the USSR built stockpiles of weapons powerful enough to erase civilization. Each side claimed it only wanted deterrence, but both were preparing for the unthinkable. The term mutually assured destruction became the backbone of global peace, a peace held together by terror. It was a balance so fragile that one mistake could ignite the apocalypse. The early years of the nuclear race were driven by raw paranoia. The Americans built hydrogen bombs, thousands of times stronger than those dropped on Japan. The Soviets followed, matching every move with equal fury. Nations dug bunkers, children practiced duck and cover drills, and sirens became part of everyday life. The bomb was no longer a weapon. It was a shadow that followed everyone. In 1953, the world witnessed its first near miss. A radar malfunction at a US airbase in Thule, Greenland, falsely signaled that Soviet bombers were incoming. For a few tense minutes, commanders debated launching a counterstrike. Only a second check stopped them. The alert had been triggered by a weather pattern. That night, humanity survived by chance, not by strategy. While both nations publicly spoke of peace, their spies and scientists fueled escalation. Each believed the other would strike first. The US deployed bombers on constant airborne alert under Operation Chrome Dome, ready to retaliate at any moment. Soviet submarines patrolled beneath Arctic waters, armed with warheads that could reach New York in minutes. It wasn't just a standoff, it was a fuse waiting for a spark. Then came October 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis. For 13 days, the world stood on the edge of nuclear war. The Soviets had secretly installed nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles from Florida. When American spy planes discovered them, President John F. Kennedy demanded their removal and ordered a naval blockade. Soviet ships approached the line. One wrong command could have ended everything. In Washington, generals urged Kennedy to invade Cuba. In Moscow, Nikita Khrushchev prepared to retaliate if he did. Nuclear war seemed inevitable. But behind the public speeches, secret negotiations unfolded. Robert Kennedy met the Soviet ambassador privately, offering a trade. The US would remove its missiles from Turkey if the USSR withdrew from Cuba. The deal was struck in silence and the world exhaled. The crisis exposed how close both nations had come to mutual destruction. What the public didn't know was that a single Soviet submarine near Cuba B-59 had nearly launched a nuclear torpedo. Surrounded by US destroyers and unable to contact Moscow, its captain believed war had already begun. Only the refusal of one man, Vasili Arkhipov, stopped the launch. His calm decision may have saved the world. After 1962, leaders realized that survival depended not only on weapons, but on restraint. Direct communication lines were established, the famous hotline between Washington and Moscow. Treaties like the Limited Test Ban Treaty tried to cool the race, but the arms buildup never truly stopped. By the late 1960s, there were enough warheads on Earth to kill every human several times over. The doctrine of deterrence rested on logic, but humans are not always logical. In 1979, a training tape at NORAD accidentally simulated a massive Soviet attack. Commanders scrambled fighter jets and prepared bombers for launch. It took 6 agonizing minutes before someone realized it was a computer error. The world had again stood seconds from annihilation because of a glitch. That same year, both sides began developing new technologies, mobile launchers, multiple warhead missiles, and early warning satellites. Each advancement made reaction faster and thinking slower. The decision window between possible attack and total retaliation shrank from hours to minutes. The human race was learning how to end itself more efficiently. In the early 1980s, Cold War tensions reignited under U.S. President Ronald Reagan. He called the Soviet Union an evil empire and accelerated nuclear spending. The Soviets, already economically strained, interpreted the buildup as preparation for attack. Paranoia deepened as NATO planned a massive military exercise in Europe called Able Archer 83, a simulation that looked too real. During Able Archer, the Soviets believed the West might be disguising a real strike as a drill. In response, they placed nuclear forces on alert. For several days, the world unknowingly hovered on the brink. When NATO's exercise ended peacefully, Moscow stood down, but later admitted it had genuinely feared an attack. It was the most dangerous misunderstanding since Cuba. Around that same time, another unsung hero made a quiet decision that saved millions. On September 26, 1983, Soviet early warning satellites reported multiple U.S. missiles inbound. Protocol required immediate retaliation. But the duty officer, Stanislav Petrov, doubted the readings. He reasoned that America would not start a war with just a few missiles. He broke protocol and did nothing. The alarms were false. Petrov's calm judgment prevented a full Soviet counterstrike. Later investigations showed that sunlight reflecting off clouds had fooled the sensors. For decades, his act remained classified, but historians now recognize it as one of the most important decisions in human history. A single skeptical mind had saved billions of lives. He later said, "I was just doing my job. The world owes him everything." Even as close calls piled up, leaders continued testing boundaries. Both nations developed smaller, tactical nuclear weapons, bombs designed to be used in battle rather than deterrence. The line between war and Armageddon blurred. NATO deployed missiles in Western Europe. The Soviets aimed theirs across the Iron Curtain. Entire generations grew up under the constant shadow of a mushroom cloud. Popular culture mirrored the fear. Movies like Dr. Strangelove and The Day After Imagine the End. Anti-nuclear protests filled city streets from London to New York. The message was clear. Humanity was tired of living one wrong signal away from extinction. Yet politicians on both sides argued deterrence was the only way to prevent aggression. It was a paradox the world couldn't escape. Meanwhile, secret accidents continued. In 1980, a maintenance worker in Arkansas dropped a wrench inside a missile silo, puncturing a fuel tank. The resulting explosion hurled a nuclear warhead hundreds of feet. Miraculously, it didn't detonate. A single slip of the hand could have wiped out half the state. Incidents like these reminded everyone that the greatest danger wasn't always war, sometimes it was human error. By the mid-1980s, both superpowers were exhausted. The cost of maintaining arsenals had drained economies and faith alike. Then came new leadership. Mikhail Gorbachev in the USSR and Ronald Reagan in the United States. Despite political differences, both men shared a fear of the abyss. At summits in Geneva and Reykjavik, they began speaking openly of arms reduction. For the first time in decades, hope flickered. In 1987, the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty was signed, eliminating an entire class of missiles. It was a small step but a giant psychological leap. People who had lived under sirens and drills began to believe in a future again. The world had survived its own recklessness, not because of perfect systems, but because of imperfect humans choosing restraint. The nuclear clock ticked backward, if only slightly. Yet the legacy of fear remained. Even after the Cold War ended in 1991, thousands of warheads stayed on alert. The weapons built during those tense decades still exist today, capable of ending life in under an hour. The threat didn't vanish, it merely changed names and borders. The nuclear shadow is long, and it still stretches over us. Looking back, historians count more than a dozen documented incidents when global annihilation was only minutes away. False alarms, miscommunications, human errors, and computer glitches, each could have been the spark that ended civilization. That we are still here is both miracle and warning. The world survived not by design, but by chance. And luck, as history shows, always runs out eventually. The Cold War's nuclear race left behind more than weapons. It left a psychology, a belief that safety requires the capacity for total destruction. Even today, that logic governs the doctrines of nations armed with nuclear power. Mutually assured destruction remains an unspoken agreement between enemies. Peace, it seems, is still bought with the threat of apocalypse. Every decade since, new crises have echoed the old ones. Regional tensions, rogue states, and cyber warfare have replaced the US-Soviet standoff, but the danger feels familiar. The buttons are still there, the systems still run, and the human factor, the one thing that saved us before, remains fallible. History may not repeat, but it certainly remembers. The lessons of the Cold War are written in radiation and restraint. In museums across the world, missiles now stand as relics. School children look at them in awe, not fear. But the metal still carries memory. Each rivet and wire tells a story of men who built machines they prayed would never be used. These artifacts are both monuments and warnings, proof of how close civilization came to erasing itself. The irony of the Cold War is that it produced both terror and triumph. The same competition that birthed hydrogen bombs also propelled humanity into space. Out of fear came innovation, satellites, computers, and communication networks that connect us today. It's a sobering reminder that progress and peril often walk hand in hand. The greatest achievements sometimes bloom beside the darkest risks. Figures like Arkhipov and Petrov rarely appear in textbooks, yet their restraint defined history. They proved that individual courage can outweigh global panic. In a world obsessed with power, they embodied humanity. Without them, the Earth might be silent today. Their legacy teaches that saving the world doesn't always require strength. Sometimes it just requires doubt. The Cold War ended not with victory, but with relief. When the Soviet flag came down in 1991, the nuclear clock slowed, but it never stopped. The arsenals remained sleeping beneath oceans and fields. Humanity had survived its own madness, for now. But survival is not the same as safety, and the shadow of the bomb still darkens the horizon. If you've stayed until the end, you've just relived the moments when the world nearly ended, and learned how fragile peace truly is. The Cold War may be over, but its lessons remain urgent. Subscribe to explore more hidden histories, the close calls, the human choices, and the stories that shaped our fragile world, because the bomb was built by hands, but avoided by hearts.